I have to tell you about this top-tier visual novel. Absolutely phenomenal in writing and presentation, and it's about degenerate criminals surviving in the worst prison system known to man. Hi, my name is August, and let me tell you exactly what makes HenPri, aka Hentai Prison, aka the Shawshank Redemption of Eroge, a must-read. Many thanks to Shirobune for providing me a review copy for me to check out, and for showing me a story that not only tells you about a man who survived hell, but also asks the hardest hitting questions about the rehabilitation of criminals, the freedom of self-expression, and the moral dilemma of censorship. Now, you might think that nude streaking in the middle of the night is for sure outright criminal and should be looked down upon. But even I don't think the man deserves 10 years in the hole for not having clothes on. Of course, he fully believes he didn't do anything wrong. It was an act of self-expression, he says. Well, according to the judge and jury, he's very much wrong, as he's sent to Tulip Prison, a special penitentiary for deviant criminals. Now, some of you may think it's justified, but let me tell you, Tulip Prison is not your average jail. This is a hellhole. This is a prison that operates on its own rules, a place where all basic human rights and decency for the imprisoned is long lost, where cruel and unusual punishment is the norm, and Shinichiro Minato gets the worst of it. Again, this is for a guy who wanted to show off peak male body performance, and now he's looking like a bald, broken twig from the guards beating him down and the inmates putting dirt in his food. Enemies are everywhere. Forget a prison break, Shinichiro's first ordeal is surviving till the next day. Sure, he's deemed a criminal, unsympathetic from the start, but seeing the way he's treated and learning about his unfortunate life circumstances makes you pity the guy. As you watch him endure the prison's brutality and injustice, you slowly begin to start rooting for the man. So, when he finally gains the strength and knowledge to exploit the prison system to his full advantage, it's actually pretty damn awesome. It's a rousing underdog story on all counts, and he is undeniably a man of iron-willed determination and willpower. You might think it's odd for me to praise this so much, especially for a title named Hentai Prison, its premise, and to root for a blatant, almost delusional exhibitionist. But the name itself is deceiving to begin with. To anyone hearing of this title will surely raise an eye, and really to recommend an average person this visual novel, much less praise it for being peak, let people look at you like you're a madman. Believe me, I know. I've tried. While we, outside of Japan, commonly see it referred to as pornographic Japanese anime in media, it actually has another definition: abnormal and perversion. And that is what this visual novel is truly about. Hentai Prison, a specialized jail for abnormal, deviant criminals. It takes the time to explore the minds of these type of individuals, what drove them this far, and the fundamental core lying underneath them, to then question, is ruthless and brutal punishment necessary to rehabilitate degenerate criminals, and whether or not they can be rehabilitated at all. But let's put a pause on that, because we gotta fight everyone in the prison first. And I mean everyone. Prisons aren't sunshine and rainbows, obviously, but Japanese Alcatraz is much worse than you expect. What was originally a coal mining town turned out to be the perfect location for the creation of Tulip Prison. With heavy militarized guards, high stone walls, and raging waters spanning miles, no one has ever broken out of the iron claw of Tulip Prison. Only those, quote-unquote, rehabilitated will walk free. Otherwise, it's back to the coal mines where death via gas explosion surely awaits. All for the profits of the prison higher-ups. Right off the bat, HenPri will outright show you the ruthlessness of Tulip Prison. From facing down the strict disciplinarian where all her orders must be met, to obeying the queen bee raining down cruelty and torment, to even prostrating under the prison's clergywoman ex-prison warden where sending you to Jesus is its own form of correction, seemingly any form of mercy is a false dream. The first few hours of HenPri can be pretty grueling and tiresome to watch. I just ask you to keep reading because it then shows you how does one survive in a place like this? Well, with goddamn willpower and crafty execution. And I have to say, watching Shinichiro perform these feats is a pure theatrical art. Regardless of a criminal sin, you do have to give credit for the sheer tactics and mind games to be able to manipulate the prison system, or exploit the incompetence. Shinichiro understanding the environment and the rules of the prison is his path to survival. Learning where the security cameras and blind spots are, knowing the daily routines of the guards, understanding understanding where the loopholes are in the actual rules. But the most important factor is how to deal with people. Tulip Prison operates under its own set of unspoken rules and hierarchy. This leads to figuring out who to contact, say a supplier who can smuggle in goods and who to avoid, such as a Yakuza boss who rules the inmates. Even bribing and blackmailing guards is a valid option. Compared to the veterans of this prison, Shuichiro is like a child in the eyes of the many, but through careful planning and execution, he's able to overcome those more devious and powerful than him. Seeing the outright insane, unbelievable feats he does is impressive, and let me tell you, how it's presented is exciting. There's plenty of dynamic sprite movement. In fact, there's barely a dull moment on screen given how these characters move around so much. Tsukihime Remake and Witch on the Holy Night may have visual spectacle, Aokana Extra 2 may have dynamic action CGs, Innocent Grey may have elegant presentation, but HenPri creates some pretty impactful moments simply off of its character sprite direction alone, and that's one hell of a feat. CGs? Yeah, HenPri does have those, but the pure aura this visual novel gives off by using a couple of black bars, slow pans, and a badass pose is just immaculate. What makes this work is that whoever was in charge of the scene direction actually put deliberate thought into how these sprites are placed and used, all to serve whatever tone the story needs, to build up suspense, to set the stage for an emotional moment, or even just to deliver a punchline. That last one really makes the most of it too. HenPri is pretty crazy. There's no end to the list of unique and interesting prisoners in here that never fails to be amusing. Over time, you'll start recognizing certain characters by their quirks. They end up becoming somewhat memorable NPCs by the game's conclusion. The banter between all the heroines is super entertaining too. The chemistry is really great as they bounce off each other super well. There's a bit of that absurdity to it. These girls are quite the oddballs too, but it's charming and strangely intimate. The sheer seriousness of Shuichiro in comparison to everyone he encounters in here is sure something. That said, the comedy can really take you back with some of its outright crass jokes to where some people may not enjoy it. Really, HenPri is wild when it comes to its humor, very similar to a game by the same developer, Nukitashi. Yes, that's right, HenPri has very similar DNA to Nukitashi, from its outlandish comedic humor to its exciting thrilling moments, and even its more serious scenes. If you enjoyed Nukitashi, I can say you will enjoy HenPri as well. That said, instead of Nukitashi sex-heavy comedy-first approach to its society rebellion premise, HenPri, while it does still have its comedic moments, yes, operates as a caper crime fiction story, doubling as a serious character drama. I would heavily encourage reading Nukitashi 1 and 2 first, because HenPri is effectively their sequel in a lot of ways. Both Nukitashi and HenPri take place in the same universe. In fact, HenPri takes place roughly 10 years after the events of Nukitashi. While it's possible to enjoy HenPri on its own, having that prior context adds more to the experience. There are a notable amount of direct references to Nukitashi's setting and key events that you'll end up feeling like you've missed crucial context. HenPri is actually a bit eye-opening when compared to Nukitashi due to their similar messages, handled in different angles. Without giving too much away, Nukitashi takes place on Saren Island, a place where people are free to express their inclinations and their island culture promotes that behavior. A direct contrast to Tulip Prison, a place where people with deviant tendencies are oppressed and looked down upon. Of course, any person would find the former completely absurd and the latter agreeable, but reading Nukitashi really makes you understand the unique circumstances of those islanders, and by the end, you'll find yourself sympathizing with their culture and cause. If Nukitashi was a case where the minority is being suppressed through exclusion and mob mentality, despite how insane their society appears, HenPri is a case of the minority being suppressed through weaponized common sense ethics, all for the greater good of society. The director of Tulip Prison be like, we have to jail these perverts because, oh no, think of the children. Both titles focuses on the outcasts of society fighting back, and in HenPri, that is in the form of a nudist shunned by the world, a dangerous Yakuza heir, a voyeuristic woman with many secrets, and a cursed black-haired girl. Shuichiro may craft schemes and plans, but that means nothing if he doesn't have the support to back him up. So who better to turn to than arguably the second ruler of the prison, the head of the residing Yakuza there, Taika Hattai. Taika is the noble, prideful Yakuza boss of the Hattai clan, a fearsome woman that commands all through her booming voice and sheer authority. I like Taika for her upstanding principles and confident leadership, and just that raw energy to silence someone. She is intimidating as all hell, and she needs to be as the leader of her clan. And yet, what makes her so powerful isn't in her pure strength and leverage, but in her charisma, that natural ability in negotiation and conflict mediation. It's why her and her gang has such a high reputation among the guards, getting those sweet benefits that other prisoners can't have. Learning how to have a positive reputation and how to talk to people are techniques to survive, and Shuichiro is going to have to learn from the best. I like how, despite how feared the Yakuza may be, actually being inside their group comes across like a brotherhood. These guys may want to stab Shuichiro to death at their first meeting, but play a couple of card games together and then they become ride or die buddies talking about their spouse and kids back home. Meanwhile, Taika talking with Shuichiro comes across like this senpai-kohai relationship, taking the kid underneath her wing. They may be criminals, but everyone's situation is unique and everyone's complex in their own way. And the story wants you and Shuichiro to get to know them more intimately. In fact, not just the Yakuza 2. All sorts of criminals are in here, those with severe offenses to those with very minor infractions. And yet, all are upheld to the same cruel treatment and disdain from others from society. Bless the poor souls who ended up in here because of sheer desperation. Say, a woman jailed for prostitution because she really needed the money. Once marked for a crime, that label will stick with you forever. Nobody strays from society because they want to. They've just got nowhere else to go. Those are the exact kind of people who need friends and family they can lean on. And sometimes, that solace is in the nest of the Yakuza. Really makes you wonder what is going on in Taika's head. The one who stands at the top with her entire clan all depending on her and her guidance. Meanwhile, we have one other particular heroine who is possibly the most stubborn, most unhinged of them all. Noa Kuribayashi is a dedicated loner, driving everyone away with her sharp-tongued remarks. She is a woman who always keeps things close to her chest, feelings, motivations, and elaborate plans. A schemer, but strangely dependable too, although I see it as her hating the idea of owing someone a favor. It's only when you enter into her route that you find out that this woman is actually pretty eccentric in her own way. I really can't tell you any more than that, but in the tier list of uniquely interesting people, I would have to say Noah's pretty up there. Her actions are pretty insane, flipping back and forth between pure competence and utter disaster. In one scene, I'm watching her map out the entire prison network, and in another, she's girl-failing all over the floor. Yes, she's seemingly normal at first, but 1, she's jailed in here for voyeurism via flying drones, and 2, I actually think she's very close to our villainous psychotic nun in terms of levels of madness. Noah sees nothing wrong with herself and her actions, but the sneering Sophia Shiralenko in charge of her jail begs to differ. A disciplinarian to the extreme, a harsh woman that won't hesitate to deal out punishment to all scum prisoners. Miss No Mercy for those who violate her orders. At the very beginning, she is the individual who subjected Shuichiro to those inhumane horrors, ugly jack-off session included. So imagine the surprise when I say she's the best and my favorite character in the game. Despite helping lead it, Sophia is clearly suffering under the effects of the prison system, moody temperament, clearly overworked, and fraying at the edges. Makes you wonder what shit she's gone through. Then again, she is the chief warden of the obscenity section, the area full of people most stubborn to their degenerate ways, including our main character. HenPri really takes the time to criticize the behaviors of those criminals and points out the bigger picture consequences of their actions. It goes beyond just saying being horny is bad and tackles it from an empathetic viewpoint. Trying to make them realize how messed up they are seems to be a hopeless task, but this prison still at least attempt to be a rehabilitation facility, and some people still believe in change. We, the reader, get to witness all of that in action, the extremely difficult process it is, and the people affected by it. Sophia, despite being a high-ranking individual, is a victim of that same system, and the emotional toll taken on her is severe. Imagine my surprise when the story reveals that Sophia willingly chose to come to Tulip prison. I believe it's her story and perspective told in Noah's story that brings such a special message in HenPri, where in a world that hates and rejects outliers, there are, or rather, there must be people willing to side with those same outliers. So let me introduce you to the girl who resides in the deepest depths of darkness. Chisato is one mysterious girl, the woman that resides in the abyss, Miss Darling Darkness, as well as Miss I Blow Shit Up. This small girl is very distant, but rather than her being mysterious or selfishly wanting to be alone, she comes off more frightfully afraid and socially anxious. And it's when Shuichiro gets to know her more intimately that she slowly begins to open herself up. I'm not usually a fan of the quieter type of heroines, but I get a kick out of Chisato's morbidly devious plans mixed with her regular gloomy self. A common development, yes, but there's quite a lot to unpack within Tulip Prison's oldest inmate. The biggest appeal I found in Chisato's route is how she fulfills a lot of the emotional core of HenPri. Sure, Taika and Noah have their own heartfelt scenes with Shuichiro, and Eriko, the underrated star of this story, remains his greatest guidance, but I find that it's through Chisato that we see that raw, unfiltered intimacy, simply because these two are the most affectionate, deprived individuals in the whole story. It's funny how awkward these two can get. The scenes with them struggling on how to write intimate scenes, much less an actual H scene for their eroge project, is both comedic and endearing. Even in such a brutal prison, one can find love. Dare I say it, it might be the most important and eye-opening thing to them, because they were dealt bad hands at the start. Shuichiro having his bare body inclination and his conversations with his little friend is one thing, but you can only imagine how horrific Chisato's backstory possibly is when such a shy and nervous girl is even abhorred by the queen of Tulip Prison herself. Chisato and Shuichiro turned out this way because they were victims of their unfortunate circumstances. Yes, they may be strange and have unusual behaviors, but those inclinations were born due to their harsh life experiences. They weren't given a chance. HenPri criminalizes all of these degenerate individuals under society's view of just morals, and when gone too far, should be punished. But it's also important to consider that their inclinations are a form of their self-expression, not merely acts of indulgence, but responses to internal voids or past traumas. So when these outliers ended up finding, relating to, and healing each other, it's just so heartwarming to see them be happy. These two undergo this sense of inner self-discovery by exploring and expressing their deepest, bare emotions. This visual novel may appear as an absurd title, hiding a caper crime thriller underneath. Again, this is from the same people who did Nukitashi, but it also discusses very introspective, thought-provoking topics. HenPri explores its material as a drama piece, all through very interesting and unconventional ways. For example, an entire arc dedicated to eroge game development becoming a commentary about the suppression of deviants, their fight for existence, and censorship. Learning how to make an eroge was not something I expected out of this visual novel, but after understanding the core messages he wanted to express, it made a lot more sense, especially when you consider what happens at the end of the arc. I find it funny how HenPri takes some small stabs at the eroge game industry in here, with all of its unusual quirks and tiresome struggles. While some lines are played off for jokes, you really can't deny HenPri's meta commentary about it, about how the artistic freedom of eroge and how often they get suppressed by higher powers, to which any visual novel fan or developer can easily sympathize with. HenPri really taps into those feelings of frustration, hopelessness, and despair, especially in its final grand route. Everyone has a right to their own beliefs and to live by them. Naturally, they are still upheld and enforced to shared standards society can agree with, but problems start to happen when people go beyond expressing their viewpoints and start forcing their morals onto others, harshly denying anyone who thinks differently. And when those same people have power, money, and social perception backing them, it gets even worse. It stops being expressing one's own morals and turns into control, selfishly believing that their way is the only correct one with no room for compromise or leniency. And it's those in the minority who end up paying the price. HenPri takes this and applies it to sex, a very intimate aspect of oneself, a base instinct of humans. Yes, kinks may be seen as degenerate, but everyone has them. Sex is fundamental to self-discovery, and when society shames or suppresses it, it's really suppressing people themselves. Tulip Prison beats down on anyone with unusual inclinations, forcing them into rehabilitation to society, regardless of their circumstances. HenPri's events tackle sexual deviancy not just as a taboo taboo or a fetish, but as a way of understanding ourselves, healing past traumas, and social acceptance. It implies that society should be more tolerant of those people, and those individuals should seek people willing to listen and understand them, perhaps even bond together in the process. I really like this. It's a really unique method to express such meaningful messages. Shuichiro is the perfect vehicle for this. He found allies willing to back him in this prison system. He found sympathizers in the most unlikely of places, and he acknowledged his past, found his true self, and changed himself in the process. However, none of that means anything if the opposing party won't come to the negotiating table. Again, Tulip Prison is a ruthless place. They don't try to understand him, they don't want to, and they won't hesitate to bring him down for their own selfish deeds. This was a rigged game from the beginning. So, if the prison refuses to treat him justly, there's only one path left: break out of this prison and take his freedom by force. And it's the best goddamn experience that you just have to read. I would like to thank everyone on Patreon for supporting me in covering visual novels. You guys are fantastic, and if you'd like to be a part of that effort, please consider subscribing. Now, if you're interested in another top tier visual novel, you might want to check out this video over here, or check out this video here for a general recommendation. And finally, go read HenPri. Otherwise, I'll fucking inhume you, baby.